What's up guys, Alt here. Welcome back to another video. In today's video, I'm going to show you how to change your steam locomotive from valve gear. Now this varies for different variations of steam engines, and this does not require a lot of soldering, but you are going to need a screwdriver. You could use a Phillips head or a flathead. Prefer to use a Phillips head, but in this video I'm going to use a flathead because it'll help get into the screws a little bit better. You will not have to do any soldering, but if you want, you might want to lubricate the drive gears. If you don't have any lubricant, then just skip the step. But if you have lubricant, when you put the when you put the drive gear back on, you will want to lubricate this. I don't have any lubricant at the moment, so I don't have to. But I will be showing you how to change the drive gear on this USRA Alco 210-2. So this is Seaboard 2491. You guys should already know what this steam engine is through if you watched my channel for a while. Just like how you know the GS4 that I'm going to be upgrading in the future of next year. Now what we're doing is we're changing 2491's drive gear from Southern valve gear to Walser's valve gear. And this is its old chassis, which had Walser's valve gear, and we're going to be changing it back to that. I am now going to show you how to do that, and it is fairly simple. You don't need any soldering, but you will want to keep track of all your screws and make sure you don't lose the crank pin screws. I just dropped my screwdriver. You don't want to lose the crank pin screws, and what those screws are, specifically the screw that connects the main rod and the flying crank to the center drive wheel. If you lose that screw, you will be in a massive pickle. And you will have a hard time trying to find it, or you might get it stuck, like, on the floor or in a keyboard or something. That actually happened to me. I got the screw stuck on my keyboard, and I had to take all the keys out to find the screw. So yeah, make sure you don't do that. And yeah, let's get into the video. Okay, so the first thing you want to do is, first off, for any steam engine that you're going to be doing this to, you want to first off disconnect the tender from the drawbar and tether or wherever it plugs into. Now, if it's one of those steam engines you can't disconnect it, don't worry, put it on a foam cradle and you should be able to disassemble it that way. I don't have a foam cradle at the moment, but what I am going to do is just leave it on its side, and I'm going to put a sponge underneath it in a little bit. Or a pillow. Probably a pillow might work as well. Pillows work pretty good for this too. Or I might just leave it here. I might just leave it here because there's nothing really too bad on this side, but it's fine. But preferably to use a cradle. I don't have one, and I don't think I have a pillow around me at the moment, or a sponge. Or a towel. A towel could work, but I don't have one. But in this case, first off, you want to take the locomotive apart. And for this locomotive, this is a Bachmann Spectrum, by the way, in case you're wondering. For this one, I had to take the shell off. Then I had to take the motor and the gearbox out to get to this part. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take off the eccentric, and then I'm going to take off the cylinders, the reverse gear, and then I'm going to take the cylinders off. I'm gonna do that on this one first before I do it on this one. So I'm gonna get to this one first, and I'm gonna show you the screws for this one. Actually, no, I'm gonna show you on this one because this one is not connected to the motor. So I'm gonna move 2491's body, its corpse, over here, and I'm gonna zoom in on where the screws are. So I'm going to show you. There's a screw right here, here, and then there's a screw here for the cylinders. You want to take the screws out. There shouldn't be no screws that you need to take out from underneath. And you're going to take the screws out of here, here, and here to remove all of this from this chassis. Then you're going to take the screw out of the center drive gear right here. And I'm going to do that now. I'm going to grab my screwdriver, make sure it's a small one or else it won't fit. And sorry for the lighting in here, it's really bad, so work with me with this. So take your screwdriver, Let's see if I can line it up. Where's the screw? Okay, there it is. Okay, you take your screwdriver, you put it in there, and then you start backing it out. You take it out completely, by the way. Take it all the way out. And then you can hand screw it by hand. Remember, do not lose this screw. This screw is very, very important, or else the locomotive will not work correctly, or at all. And you have to use that specific one. You can't use a different one. There you go. Now you got the flying crank off. You can take the main rod off, but we're going to wait to take that off. And we're going to go to the other side. Also, be very careful not to bump this. If you bump this, you will take this out of this part. And this is a massive pain to put that in. This happened to me before when 2490 was just a rolling piece of rolling stock. So be very careful not to bump that, or else you're going to have a pain of getting it back into that, and it's very hard to get in back into that plastic hole. Let's take this screw out as well. Very, very careful not to lose it. Okay. Put it back with the other screw. It's right here. I'll put them right next to each other so I know what they look like. Alright, so now both of them out. Now what you're going to do is pry off the main rod. You're going to pry off the main rod and you're going to pull it back. So that way it's not touching the drive wheel itself. Show you again, pry it off. Pull it back. And there you go. So now it's not touching. And this, you won't really have to do any quartering. All you just have to do is make sure they're in the right spot, because you're not re-gauging the wheels. And if your wheels are engaged, you shouldn't have a problem. Also, you might also want to check to make sure your wheels are engaged, just to be sure. For what I know, I'm pretty sure these are engaged. I don't have a gauge with me, but I'm pretty sure that these are, because I haven't really had a problem with this locomotive, so I'm pretty sure the wheels are fine. But I'm going to be getting a gauge soon to test that. But make sure your wheels are engaged, or else you might have some problems later. Begin also taking this screw out, right? Take the screw out. I'm going to set this screw right here so you can see it. And then take this one out of the reverse gear section. Okay. A magnetic screwdriver might help you a little bit as well. And then just there, and leave it there. Alright, so now this part is free. Now it's rocking back and forth. We're not going to move it yet, because we have to take the cylinders out too. With this, you also have to take the cylinders out. If you don't, it probably won't work correctly. So now there's a screw right there. We're gonna take it out with the screwdriver. These are all Phillips screws, by the way. The only screw that's not a Phillips is the screw that was on the Centrix. That's a flathead. Okay, that screw's out. Now we can be carefully lift this out, and there you go. Simple. What you don't ever want to do is bend this. Do not bend this part. There is a rod right here, and if you bend that, it's either going to snap off or it's going to break and the pins are going to be lost. So you don't want to do that. Don't bend that whatsoever. And what you're going to want to do is make sure these are just hanging. These, like the centric, the flying crank, make sure those are just hanging, and then carefully you want to hold it by the cylinders. The rest will stay fine. And then just set that to the side somewhere. I'm going to set it over here next to my mouse. I don't know if you can see it, but you probably can't, but I'm going to set it next to my mouse. And this is what your hollow chassis will look like without the drive gear. It'll just be like this, just 10 wheels, just like that. Don't pull the rods off the center wheel. You shouldn't have to. You shouldn't have to mess with this part. So that's that. So now what we're going to do, I'm going to do the second part off camera. And it should be relatively the same process. I'm going to do the same thing off camera. It should be relatively the same process. However, the only process that it will be a little bit different with here, you got wires on this one. You got wires actually connected to live. Well, they're not live now because there's no current flowing through them, but you got wires that are soldered to certain parts and connected to certain clips. So be careful not to upset the wires. And you shouldn't have to touch this part at all, really. You just have to touch the lower frames. But if you really want to be very safe, you can, and this might be recommended if you really want to. You can disconnect the you can unscrew the terminal that is they're connected to. You can unscrew it, and you can, and if it is clipped into place and not soldered into place, you can unclip them. Just make sure you know which wire is going into which hole. But I'm going to do this part off camera because it's relatively the same process. Just be careful not to snag your wires. We got the southern valve gear removed. So now I'm going to show you how to put the valve gear back and how to put it on. I'm going to put it on first, and then we're going to put it back. Alright, so this is what it looks like now without the valve gear again, so you should already know. It's the same as the other one. Now I'm going to show you how to put the valve gear back on. And I'm going to show you how to put it on the one that we're installing it on. And if you're wondering what the difference between Walser's valve gear is, it'll be in the thumbnail when you look at the video. It'll be like a before and after. So that's what it'll look like afterwards. I'll show you what it looks like afterwards. And then before we're gonna test it before we call it a done. So like I said, this is the part where you might want when you put it on, you want to lubricate the gears with grease if you have any, and then you want to lubricate the valve gear itself with oil if you have any. But yeah. So now what we're gonna do is we're gonna put it on very carefully. Gonna carefully set it into place. Make sure you don't bend any of the rods, because the rods are made out of aluminum, and you don't want to bend them too much or they will come broken. Alright, so now make sure none of the pieces are under the wheels. Some pliers or tweezers might be a good idea as well to hold them, but you shouldn't have too much of a problem. So now that they have the valve gear in place, what you're gonna do, first you're gonna put the cylinder screws in first. You're gonna take the screw, right, and you're gonna drop it. Actually, another good tip to do is we're gonna take it out again. There is a slot that the screw sits in for the cylinders. It's like right here. And what we're going to do is we're going to put the screw in there. This will help us get the screw aligned when we put the cylinders on before we put the other screws on. So we're going to put the screw head in like that. We're going to take a screwdriver, and this will help us have tension when we put the screw in to the hole. We'll put the screwdriver in there. I'm going to line this up very carefully. Remember, don't bend the rods. And we're going to set it in, and we're going to screw it in. Just came out again, so we're going to grab the screw again. Put it in the slot. Again, not bending the rods. You don't really want to touch the rods at all, to be honest, unless you're like lubricating and taking them off. But like I said, be very careful with these because the rods are very delicate. And depending on what type of locomotive it is, it won't work or at all. Because valve gear varies from locomotive to locomotive, and the valve gears I can lift off my head is Stephenson's, Walser's, Baker, and Southern. And Franklin poppet valves. Used mostly on Pennsylvania and New York Central locomotives. Carefully set it down in there. There we go. Now, it's not seated properly. There we go. Now it is. And then we screw the screw in, and the screw came out again. All right. Well, we're just gonna put the screw down in there. Take the screw, and it fell out again. I'm gonna do this part off camera, but actually no, never mind. We got it. The seats. Make sure that's seated properly as well. And you don't want to put this in without the screws, or else it's just gonna lift out, and it's probably gonna bind up and break. but just make sure you don't lose your screws either. And make sure you don't snag a wire or something, or bend a rod, because that would be bad. If a rod bends or twists, which it looks like something's about to do now. No, it's alright. Okay. Yep. Come on. There we go. We take the screw head and put it in the slot again. Just like that. And again, it might not work first try, but you know, you gotta try at the same time. There we go. And now you screw the screw in. Make sure your screw's not crooked as well. Mine was crooked, so I gotta back it out. And now we put it in straight. Alright, there we go. Now what we're gonna do is we're gonna put this part in. Make sure this part specific is also seated properly, or else the reverse gear won't turn properly. Alright. Okay, my battery died. Alright, so now we're gonna take this 2 screws and we're gonna put them right here. There's 2 screw slots here. We're gonna take the screws and we're gonna put them there. So take your screwdriver, take your screw, and set them down in there. Oh, I set it in sideways. Line the screw up with the hole. Maybe the screw will drop in. Okay. Make sure the rods are safe, because we're not putting the rods on into the gears themselves yet, because we want to get this seated properly before we put the rods on. Also, one tip: make sure your main rod doesn't come out the cylinders either, and if it does, try to put it back in before you put the rods themselves on. Sometimes it'll look like that, and then you want to push that forward and then put the rod in. Sometimes it can unseat this. You just want to reseat it. Get that seated properly. Come on. Okay, let's check the other side as well. Okay, I just put the main rods on just so that way I can help seat this in there. I'm not going to put the eccentrics on yet. Make sure the holes are lined up, and yes they are. Alright, now we can take our screw and you're going to put it in the hole again. No pun intended. And this is why I said a magnetic screwdriver probably would be a good option for this, because sometimes the screw will fall out of the screw driver when you're trying to hold it, and like it just did now, it's just sliding everywhere. I'm just gonna pull it out. Just gonna throw it. Now it's stuck in the wheels and in the rods. Okay, we got it out. And now it's lifting this up again. Okay. Come on. Sit. No, now it's standing up. Okay, there you go. I think I have a... Yep, I do. I hope it fits this. This is one of my magnetic screwdrivers. Not really not really a too good one, but it does work. Has one. Yeah, it's not really trying to... Magnet's not really working properly in it, but it's the closest I've got. There we go. Now I screw the screw in. Make sure it's sat in there. Take the other screw, put it in, line it up with the hole for the screwdriver. I mean for the screw. Lose the screw. Don't lose the screw. And then the screw is here. Come on. Come on, man. Come on, you stupid screw. The frustration's real, guys, but still. You know, like they always say, you know, when you're doing a hobby, you know, you're gonna get frustrated. Even though, you know, at least it's something you like, but at least it's not as frustrating as trying to, you know, pay bills or something like that, even though I don't pay bills at the moment, but still. You know, I'm only 16, but still. That's besides the point. Okay, the screw's stuck in between the wheels, so we're going to use a smaller screwdriver to get it out. I'm going to turn it upside down. Turn it upside down, give it a little shake. Alright, it came out. Put this down, take the screw again, take the screwdriver, you can use this one. God dang it, the screw came out again. Okay, we're gonna flip it over again. Alright, and make sure to periodically check your rods that aren't connected to the wheels yet. Make sure to check those over. Make sure those are alright. God dang it. Why did it? Okay. Come on. I'm gonna flip it over again. And we're gonna try this screwdriver again. Just give it another try. See how this goes. Maybe some luck. Nope, no luck. Okay, well. We're gonna do this part off camera just because of how fiddly. Okay, about maybe 5 or 10 minutes later of fiddling, of the screw sliding all over the place, I finally got the screw in. So there we go. So now the screw's in, and what you're gonna want to do, if you remember those crank pin screws, and just like a real locomotive, that is just a very, very large pin that the screw goes in, that the rods fit onto and are put on. So what we're gonna do this. We're gonna do the fireman's side first, and the easiest way I find to do it is I put the rods in the 6 o'clock position, basically all the way down to the floor. Is what you're gonna do. Is what I do at least. And I take the main rod, right, like this. I slide it on. I take the eccentric, and the eccentric, it will go like this. You take it, and then, I'm sorry, my arm's in the way. I'll show you once I put it on. You take it, and then you put it on like that. That is how it goes on in the 6 o'clock position. That's what it'll look like. And then you will take your screw, and remember, be very careful with these. You don't want to lose them. You take it, and you hand turn it a little bit. Turn it a little bit into the pinhole. Make sure this is in the right position as well. You just want to make sure. And then give it a light tug to make sure that's been locked in a little bit. Okay. So now that it's now locked in a little bit. It's now in. You take your screwdriver, your flatheads, and then you begin to put it in. And you don't want to tighten it all the way, or else the screw won't really turn, or else the rods won't really turn correctly. Don't hard tighten it, but you want to make sure there's enough tension so that way this doesn't move too freely. You want to make sure so it turns just like that. And now since it turns, you want to lubricate the rods, lubricate all the pins, all the moving parts. You want to lubricate all of those, everything. Anything that moves right here, you want to lubricate it. And again, make sure when you were putting the cylinders and the reverse gear pieces back on, drop my screwdriver again. Make sure that the piston itself is in the cylinder, or else it won't work correctly as well. All right, so now that works, you're going to repeat the same process on the other side. And like I said, 6 o'clock position, move the eccentric out the way, put the main rod on, then you take the eccentric itself, make sure that it's on, you grab your screw. Where did I put it? It was just right here. Oh, it's right here. It's under my arm. You grab your screw and you put it in. Like I said, tighten it with your hand. It'll be a little bit easier. And give it a light tug on the wheel to make sure that's in. And then you can hand screw it if you want to, but you might want to use a screwdriver and drop it again. And then begin turning the screw with the screwdriver. Make sure it's in. Turn it. Don't tighten all the way. Just make sure that it has enough tension, and press on the eccentric. Realign the screwdriver. And remember, to the right is tight, to the left is loose. Righty tighty, lefty loosey. And there you go. Simple. And now we basically swap 2491's drive gear for Walsh's valve gear. In exchange for, we changed from Southern valve gear to Walsh's valve gear that easily. Simple. Not really too hard. A little bit of fiddling might take you a little bit of time. One of my wires came undone from the motor, I think is what it was. Yeah, one of my motor wires came undone. All I'll do is have to snip that on, put it in, and then it'll work again. But other than that, not too hard. And what I'm going to do now is put the other drive gear, put this drive gear, like right here, the southern valve gear, on the other one. And that one shouldn't be too hard because there's no wires. So yeah, that's simple enough. And all we have to do is just, all I have to do is just snip the wire on the motor, so I can put it back in the little chip here. And then we'll just connect it to the tender, and we'll run it around the layout, and we'll see how it goes. Okay, so we're back with the 2491, and it has this valve gear attached. And now what we're gonna do is we're gonna run it around and do a little test. Now I did have run into one problem before I did. The valve gear was this part, the centric, it was flopping a little bit, so I just tightened that up. The screwdriver now runs perfect, and now it works a lot better. So now I'm testing on this loop, having it go through that switch and then through that switch around through here, and it runs perfectly, no problems whatsoever. It runs just like how I took it off. No problems whatsoever so far. Valve gear is turning accordingly. It's running perfectly and forward. When it gets to like about here, we're gonna reverse it. Alright, now we're gonna reverse it. One problem I do have, that's not really an operational problem, but this wheel sometimes tends to hang up on switches, but not really too big of an issue. We're gonna reverse it now. And in case you're wondering what's on the back, that's just a Pennsylvania gondola. No problems running in reverse either. And again, sorry for the lighting. My room, it doesn't really have really good lighting, but I'm gonna get around to changing the lights and getting some more lighting here, so that way it can be photo friendly. But yeah, it works pretty good. Works pretty well. Okay, well, I think that was a pretty good success. We changed the valve gear and it runs perfectly. Literally no issues. Other than the fact it still has the crappy Bachmann decoder in it, but other than that, I think that was a pretty good success. That goes to show you that some stuff in this hobby isn't really too hard to fix or change. Just a matter of tinkering. It can be a little frustrating, but it's really not too bad if you know what you're doing. And yeah, that goes for that. That's about it. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and if you did, make sure to like and subscribe. I'm going to leave you 2 run-bys with 2491, and I hope you enjoy.